Dear viewers, welcome to Friday's livecast. And this is your host, Deloar. You are watching today's program live at the same time on Facebook and YouTube. This is broadcasting from our West Babylon, New York studio. Today, our topic is COVID-19 and homeschooling. In our discussion panel today, we have 4 guests. Dear viewers, let's welcome to our guest. First of all, we have Kelly Hamlin.
Hello.
Hello, Kelly. Welcome to our show. She is a parent of first-year college student. She has been a special education teacher for 23 years, and currently she is serving as the curriculum coordinator and assistant principal of a school for children with special needs. Then we have Christine Cornyn. Christine is a full-time realtor with Exit Family Realty, and she has two children. Then we have Dr. Jennifer Economist, parent of 2 children, ages 5 and 4, one with special needs. She has been teaching in higher education industries for a long time, majoring in English and special education, and currently she is an adjunct assistant professor at Touro College. And then we have Abby. Hi, Abby, welcome to our show.
Thank you for having me.
No problem. Abby is Abby Swatowski. She is currently serving as a principal of a Catholic elementary school on East End, and previously she served as a history teacher as the middle and high school level for 12 years, and as a principal in Stamford, Connecticut for 2 years. Dear viewers, so we're gonna go one by one today with our participants, and we'll see what kind of homeschooling experiences they're facing and what kind of challenges they're facing and what is the outcome from there. First of all, I like to go to Kelly. Kelly, you there, right?
Yes.
So first question for Kelly is, what are the things you learn about your children during the pandemic that you never knew before?
So one thing that we found during the pandemic with the homeschooling and the online virtual teaching is that we got to know our families a lot better and what the needs are of the families and how to adapt and teach the students to what should be going on at home, and teaching our parents how to work with their children and meet the needs at home. So we realized a lot of our parents didn't have the skills or knowledge of how to work with the students to meet their needs, such as toilet training or having them do daily routines. So that we worked on a lot of that, and we learned how to help our parents at home to meet those needs.
And also another follow-up question, like you serve the special children with needs, right? So
yes, I work with preschool.
So can you tell about a little bit what you are doing in this situation with this student? How difficult it was, your situation?
What the situation right now? So a lot of our students are preschool and Spanish speech delayed and on the autistic spectrum. So routines are very important. And one thing we realized is how to teach that we really need to help our parents learn how to do those routines at home. And being home for 2 months, the parents have realized how much more they can do with their children and how much their children are capable of doing.
Okay, that's excellent. And what did you see from there? Like any output you see you want to share with us?
So for the future, obviously, it sounds like we're going to be a little bit more on this online virtual.
So we're going to go to Kristen right now. The Kristen, question for you. Like as a parent of two children, homeschool is something is new for you, right?
Very new.
Yes, yes, something is very new. So in this situation, how do you like adapt with that home schooling, and what is the output from there you get it?
Well, right now I only have to homeschool one child. My youngest is 2.5, so he was in daycare. One of my biggest struggles, though, is trying to juggle the two of them because the 2.5-year-old doesn't understand that it's time to sit down and do homework and time to be quiet and things like that. So that's been a little bit of a struggle, but we've managed to get him into another room and try to set him up with activities and shows in the meantime. So that was one of the first challenges I had.
Okay.
Another major challenge that we had was all the technology. I mean, I tend to be a little tech savvy, but I never did Google Classroom and all those other things. And at the beginning, the schools weren't even sure what platforms they were going to be using. So that took a couple of weeks of, them figuring out what they were going to be using and what we were allowed to use as far as technology wise goes. But, I learned one important thing that I actually tell my neighbors and my friends about is that these teachers are human.
Yes.
If you just tell them, listen, I'm having a hard time today, we didn't get to the work, today was a family day, they understand that. They're trying to do their best as well. So some of the mom friends are thinking that the work is just being pumped out at us and we just have to keep up with it. And we don't, I think we need to take a step back and realize that, this is their obligation and this is what they need to do to send us the work, but they are human. Just reach out to them and let them know that you're struggling with something, and they're very receptive.
Yeah, that's excellent. And really, you adapted. How long does it take to adapt?
Continue on Fox County.
Well, I have a first grader, and it depends on his mood. And from the beginning, I took a very liberal approach. I mean, our house isn't a scheduled house. My husband's a firefighter, so he comes in and out. I'm a real estate agent, so I go in and out. Our schedules are not 9 to 5. And I have a 2.5-year-old. So mornings, when some people think is the best time to sit their children down and do everything, that's not necessarily what works in our house. So I took a very liberal approach, and I said when I felt like he would be ready to work and apply himself, we sat down and we did more during that time. And if I felt like it was just going nowhere, I let him go and play and get his energy out.
Okay, that's good. So it's like a rotation, like you do the rotation.
It's a
Yes.
constant rotation. Sometimes
Yeah.
we do it at 7 o'clock at night. Sometimes he's doing work while I'm cooking dinner, and that's what works for us. He's a very energetic little kid. So, if I try and sit him down, it's not going anywhere. It's not, he's not retaining anything. So there's no reason to try and do it on a schedule. And that's one of the things I had to talk to the teacher about was, we're not going to do this at 9 o'clock in the morning, but you'll get his work every day. And, she was very receptive to that. So I think that really helped in communicating with her.
Yes, and as you are a full-time realtor, so you have to adjust your time with the homeschooling, right?
Sure. And potty training. And like I said, my husband's a fireman, so he comes in and out, and he also trades commodities at home. So he's constantly, on the computer and watching the markets. So we're just constantly juggling, but we make do. We, as like I said, we take a very liberal approach. We take it as it comes and we handle what we can handle in the moment.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now I'm going to go to Dr. Jennifer.
Hi, how are you?
Jennifer, good. Thank you for coming in the show.
Thank
I
you
have
for having me.
first question for you is some viewers is asking the question, how is homeschool is different than homework? Can you explain a little bit?
Sure. So I think first and foremost, I think we all looked at the quantity and we thought it might have been so much more than we had anticipated. So I think that could be one way it's different. And I also think for me personally, the level of expectation was different. So for example, when you're working with homework, I think you're not as worried about it getting done because you are looking at it as a reinforcement of skills. But when you're looking at homeschooling, you're wondering, have they ever been taught this before? Is this a review if it's not specified? What if my children don't get this? Should I be reinforcing the skill with additional resources? Should I be purchasing, IXL learning, or should I be doing something in addition to what the teacher is doing? So I think for me personally, I recognize that it might not be that different in terms of the quantity or how they're doing things per se, but it could also be just the pressure and the level of the expectation for a mom. And then if you're an educator, I think it's even more pressure added because you feel like, well, I should know this or I should have to do this. So I think overall, I just think it's that level of unknown certainty that you don't have as a parent. So I think for me, that's the major difference.
Okay, excellent. And what type of insight into your children's education did you get, and what did you do with that information?
So I gained a lot of insight. I have a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, and because my 4-year-old gets OT, PT, and speech therapy, a lot of the emphasis is always on him. But something that I learned about my daughter is that she was actually struggling with reading. For example, we were using a reading program called Raz Kids, and she was looking at the picture and she was reciting what she heard, and she sounded like she was a beautiful reader. And it wasn't until I got the report card information and collected more data on her that I recognized that she was relying too much on the pictures, which is something that I couldn't tell in the first few weeks of homeschooling. So something that I did do was I started covering up the pictures and then recognized that she actually didn't know how to read. So a positive aspect of this whole experience was that I called on one of my friends from high school. She is from All Above Literacy, Above and Beyond Literacy. And she's been working with her, and my daughter has been doing phenomenal. So had it not been for this experience, I may not have known that or may not have been able to get her that help as early as I did. And another thing I learned about my son is that he's probably the same for his teachers as he is from me. So I didn't feel that badly if he didn't listen. But one of the things that I tried to do was I tried to really better understand his OT and PT and speech needs. And I was able to go, when we didn't have any direction, as Kristen was saying before, I was able to go on Amazon and I was able to just research what are some resources for occupational therapy. And I wound up finding those resources on there and testing them out. So I think that was a good opportunity for me. And through the teletherapy, I was also able to connect with the providers. And, I started to recognize things that he was doing or not doing that I was not attuned to. So, for example, she was having him follow a car in a zigzag on a paper. So I said, oh, let me go on Amazon and buy him one of those car rugs. So I think it provided a lot of insight, and again, it gave me that level of comfort, talking with that provider to take the pressure off. It's okay if he only does 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be 40 minutes. And going back to what Kristen was saying, I think really altering that level of expectation with your kids and developing new reward systems is very important.
That's great. And whenever I know you are serving in the special education and you are serving in the higher education, right?
Yes.
So what do you see the difference in this situation? Like, there are child from the kindergarten level to there is a child, like a children from the, 12th grade or whatever. So how do you differentiate that? How is it affecting?
Yeah, so I definitely think there is a difference. For example, as adults, we may not need that interaction, that face-to-face interaction as much as we would need as a child. I think the peer-to-peer interaction is the most crucial part, and I don't think not all of the districts are conquering that need. So I think it's up to the parents to initiate play dates, virtual play dates online, especially if they don't have siblings. And I think on the college level, sometimes it's a bit easier because there was some sort of a hybrid component where you have half online, half face-to-face. I think it was a bit easier for the colleges too, because they had those measures in place. But I think it was also easier for the adults to adapt because they had a higher level of understanding. For children, they just don't understand the need for the change. They don't understand the complexities of the virus. So I definitely think that social face-to-face interaction with the kids was very important, which was lacking in some instances.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Now I'm going to go back to Kelly. Kelly, question for you.
Yes.
As you are serving the special needs children every day, right?
Yes.
And in this situation, do you think is there any mental things is happening because of the pandemic more than the before?
As far as for the children, I feel like they don't really notice as much that they're not in school, some of them, but the ones that have are asking for their classmates and stuff, and it's very limited because our policy is that we don't do any group lessons with the students. So the only way they see each other is pictures on the class dojo. So talking to parents, we're seeing kids are having more meltdowns, and we're giving strategies on how to work on that. And we've been doing a lot of behavior modification with our parents and teaching them strategies to work with the students and how to interact and get them ready for when they do come back to school.
Okay, excellent. Now I'm going to go back to Kristen. Kristen, one of the viewers is asking the question, like as a parent, mom, you never experienced this kind of homeschooling before, right?
Definitely not.
Yeah, definitely not. And you have a small kids. And now you are in the homeschooling and already you adjusted that, right? So now the thing is, how's your mental condition? Like in the normal situation, you have a timeline, your daily routine. Now you have to adjust with the new situation, and how you are like, adapting the situation, or how is the mental things is going on in your head? Are you feeling stressed sometimes? Not only you, maybe
Today I'm doing great.
today. I know you.
Yesterday was probably a 7. The day before might have been a 2. I'm just taking it day by day. I mean, I can manage my own, see, here he comes now. I can manage my own mood and my own attitude and my own patience level. But when you throw, a 6-year-old into it and a temper tantrum and a dinner and, a 2.5-year-old who needs something immediately, eventually everything just kind of flies off the handle. But you just got to regroup. So some days are 2, some days are 10. And I actually spoke to my neighbor across the street about that yesterday. She was having a really bad day. And I just said to her, this too shall pass. I know that sounds really, cliche, but this too shall pass. It's just one day and it's your day. I'm like, have your day, have your bad day, because, you're going to wake up tomorrow and it might be a great day. I mean, you just have to take it day by day. We don't know what's going to come next. So.
Yeah, you just need to deal with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I'm going to
Talk
go back
about
to
being
Jennifer.
present.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly. Now I'm going to go back to Jennifer.
Sure.
Jennifer, you are educating the different level and different situations. Now, I'm going to ask you the question from a viewer asking the question. His name is Steve. His name is Steve. He's asking the question, like, what kind of mental, like, a affection is going to have mental effect on the child from like a 6th grade to 12th grade. I know you are focusing on that group. So what kind of mental affection? They said they cannot go outside for the, for playing the games and whatever. So they're going to have it only sitting at home, in the computer. So what kind of like a mental situation? Because yesterday I was hearing the news, like there's a lot of problem with a child we have to face in the future, like some of the child and children, they are facing some mental issues. And we have to work on that. Do you have any program, or in the future, do you think something like that was going to happen? And what is your steps?
Sure. Well, I think social emotional learning should be part of all curriculum. And I think it's up to the parents, again, now to provide that support where children are learning to be reflective, self-regulate, and maintain healthy relationships, for one. So I think at the 6 through 12 level, again, it is my perception and my belief that it's probably a bit easier because they do have technology and means to connect with one another, and they can initiate that dialogue, whereas younger children cannot do that without the assistance of their parents. And much of the Finland research focused on play-based learning, So when you have an environment that's not conducive to play, and that's the vehicle for learning with little kids, they're going to be very limited in their interactions. So therefore, you could notice some regression, even with children that are unclassified. They don't have to be special education students to understand that there's a void there. And primarily, leaning on technology, I think is going to be a challenge. And I was actually reading something that I saw online yesterday where 6-year-old children are asking parents what are wrong with people in books if they're not wearing masks and they're not practicing social distancing. So now we're coming into a whole slew of issues on, what these regular norms are. And it's really difficult if these discussions are not developmentally appropriate for children. So personally, I've decided not to go into detail. I just explained that unfortunately there's a virus out there and it will go away soon. And every time my children ask about it, I just redirect them and say, okay, when you go back to school, what is something that you want to do? Or who are some friends that you miss right now? And would you like mommy to call them? Would you like to make a card for them? But I think eventually, there is going to have to be a plan that comes forward on behalf of the schools. If they're not doing that virtual connection with the kids and bonding with the students, they're going to have to come up with some sort of social emotional learning plan for them, because I do think you'll see later on, maybe not right away, but I think later on you'll see, deficiencies pop up.
That's excellent. And I'm going to ask you the follow-up question. Another viewer asking the question, her name is Jane. She's asking, right now that the school is going to open, correct? And there is some rules and regulations they're putting into the place. And this is something completely new than the normal. Like, for an example, we have to maintain the social distancing while they're sitting and while they're doing some activities. So how this will add up? Do you think we need a special training for the child and for the the adult students, whoever is the level is? And what do you think? Do you need a special kind of training before even going to the school and start practicing that? Because when they're going to the school, already they're in the situation. But do you think you need a special practice for that?
Are you asking me specifically?
Yeah, I'm asking you, yes.
So, I definitely think we are at a crossroads here. We've got to revolutionize education, and we've got to change the way that we are doing things. So I absolutely I think there's going to need to be some sort of assessment, not a formal assessment on paper, but the schools probably would benefit, I know as a parent, from giving a survey out to parents and trying to identify how things have changed. That way they could use that informal data to drive their instruction, to drive their classroom dynamic. For example, they might be able to include a couch in a classroom, which is something that could be done and probably should be done at some point to make the kids feel more at home. Because if you're going to be leaving children home until, the fall, they would have had a large chunk of time. So maybe to ease those fears that the children have, they could change the classroom setting in order to make it more conducive to that type of environment. But I definitely think it's going to require feedback from parents and families, consulting the research, as well as taking suggestions from kids. What could we do to ease this transition? I know for my son personally, we're now trying to think long-term. He qualifies for summer service, but we're trying to come up with a plan that's going to work if this happens again. So now we're not entirely relying on that face-to-face interaction. So it's going to definitely come with brainstorming for sure. And yeah, I think intervention needs to happen 100%.
Okay, excellent. Now I have a question for Christine. Christine, now the situation is we don't know when it's going to get this over, right? We don't have a specific direction from the the state. What's going to happen next? Because it's different phases, we have to adapt with the situation, correct? So now, in this situation, let's say, for an example, to get to the normal, let's say, for an example, a lot of moms, they are in the spring, they have a different kind of activities. Right now, we cannot think like that. And even, like, that from today, all the New York State's parks are opening, like beaches are opening, I think, right? So when the beaches are opening, now they have a limited things. So now how you're feeling like that, this kind of thing to adapt from your point of view?
Well, me personally, I really try and avoid the fear. I try and avoid the news. I try and avoid those things with my kids. Wash your hands, sneeze in your elbow. I mean, those are just regular things that, my son doesn't do. I mean, he's a young boy. So the more I can reinforce that, as far as, wearing masks everywhere and going to the beach and wearing a mask, maybe I won't take him to the beach. For me personally, I don't believe in trickling down that fear to them. Maybe, we started to play with neighbors. We've seen grandparents, those sort of things in very small groups, at home locations, outside, that sort of thing. They can play, but they can't touch. I'd much rather take that approach than have them go out and see everybody in a mask right now, because I don't know that that's necessarily going to stay that way. And, the CDC came out with all those new rules and regulations of what the schools are going to, what they can anticipate the schools are going to look like, or what the classrooms are going to do as far as distancing and masks and nurse and temperature taking and all that. And I just can't help but to think like that sounds like a completely different country. Like that's a completely different government. That's not even, that's not like a way of life that we're used to. And I'm just not ready. I'm not going to cross that road and broach that until I have to. And, there's just one thing to bring up, which might be a totally another segment, but there's a lot of death in question right now for like a 6-year-old and a 7-year-old. And, it's hard to explain that, like, if they don't have a mask on, they might die. And, I just can't fear monger my child like that. I'm going to protect him as much as I can protect him. I'm not bringing him into stores. We're not going to Target. We're not going to the mall. We're not doing those things, but we're going to hang out in our backyard with our neighbors and have a nice time and not kiss and hug and wrestle, so I'm doing what I can with a 6-year-old and a 2.5-year-old, and with myself for my own sanity. I can't believe that that's where we're going to go. That's not where I see it going. And it goes back to what you were saying about taking surveys with the parents. I think we'd be really, really surprised to see how many parents are ready to like inject our children back into the world. I don't think that some of the parents are as fearful. I mean, I'm fearful of my grandmother. I'm fearful of the people on the front lines. I'm fearful of my husband when he goes to work. He's a fireman, but I can't have my husband coming home every day and having my kids not interact with him. I don't believe in that. Will he come home and wash up? Of course. Will he change his clothes? Will he do all those precautions necessary? Absolutely. He'll keep testing for the antibodies, those sort of things. But, I'm not going to have my kids not hug my husband. Like, it's just not going to happen. That's not the world that I want to live in. And I think the more that we practice those cultures and the more that we do those things, the more we're living in the fear of the unknown. And, we're taking steps backwards, not forwards. We're not going to know how good things can be if we don't take any steps forward to see, or any, we could take precautions, but we also need to take, proactive steps to see what we can open things up to. We can't just keep closing things and leaving them closed. Yeah. So that's my personal, I know other people are fearful, and, that's up to them. I've seen it all around now. You do you, I'll do me, respectfully. And we'll have to see where that takes us.
Right. And I agree with you 100% about living in fear. And also too, personally in my household, it's not to dismiss any of the severity of what's going on, but part of our family structure is learning to believe and have faith. So whatever, religion that you believe in, but I think it's very important. And I think that's something that children need to understand. If that's, the choice that you want in your household, but faith is a huge part of our household. And that's a good discussion to have with them in our house, to say, okay, in tough times, how does faith play a role in our lives, and start to introduce them to that. So I think everybody has their own way of doing things, but I agree with you that, I don't do the same things with my children that I was doing before, just because I don't know if it's actually necessary to bring them into that setting right now.
Right.
Just happy in the backyard.
Yeah.
I mean, and I'm not willing, and again, this is a personal thing, I'm not willing to implement all these things that the CDC are saying. And like Deloar was referencing, like, what kind of, are we going to have to retrain our kids to think different ways and do different things? And what kind of, are we going to teach them they have to wear a mask and those sort of things? I'm just not really willing to implement those things at this time, because, some people are faith-based, some people are not. I mean, I'm really hope-based. So like, I may not talk religion, but my children are not going to be stripped from the sense of hope and positivity. So I'm not going to say to them, yes, you have to wear a mask until we know. And the more we say that they can't do, the less hope they have that things are going to be, right, back to the way they were used to. I mean, normal is not even a word we can use anymore, but just back to the way that they were used to learning and playing with their friends and seeing their family. So I'm not going to strip them of all of that.
Thank you, Kristen. And we are almost at the end of the show. I have last one question for every participant over here. The question is, with the homeschooling in the pandemic situation, what is some positive impact you got it from there? And if something you have to face in the pandemic in the future, what you do differently than what you're doing right now? First question for Kelly. Kelly, please. Okay, I think we are not hearing her. Okay, so let's go to Jennifer. You can answer this question.
Yeah, sure. So I just think one thing I would do differently is I would probably maybe, I guess, reach out to the teachers a little bit more. I think that I kind of just take what they say and try and do it on my own because I feel that I'm responsible. But I haven't once during this whole pandemic asked for help. I've asked questions, regarding certain assignments and things like that, but I've never said, hey, my daughter is, kind of really missing everybody. Would you be able to call me on the phone? Because I just don't know if that's something that is, within the confines of their contract. So, and I learned it's okay to ask for help, and I'll probably do it more. For example, with the reading tutor, I tried to tackle it on my own at first, but the reality of the situation is that you just can't do it all. So I would probably ask for more help.
Okay,
Sure.
and tell us about some positive impact we got it from homeschooling in the pandemic.
Kristen or me?
Yeah, you.
I just think overall the positivity is that, I really just learned to be more patient with my children. Patience is a virtue and we learn about it every day, but I had to find new ways of being patient that I never even knew, because you are that primary educator and the mommy now turns, into a different role that they're not used to. So more patience for sure. And I learned to live in the moment more, It's okay if we're in the middle of working on something and then they make a joke, it's okay to not have to redirect them, to just, let them get their sillies out and then go back to what we were doing. Or like Kristen said, if you do it at night, I know at the beginning I was all about a schedule, but in this case, it's just not a normal circumstance for sure.
Okay, same question for Christine as well. Christine, could you please share some?
I'd say something really similar. I mean, I wouldn't say that I lowered my expectations, but I think I adjusted my expectations as far as, like we were saying, conducting a schedule and what you can and can't approach the teacher on. And, the open communication with the teacher has been key for me. If I see, first graders, my son confuses his B's and his D's. That's something very, very small, but every time he reads, he writes, and everything he does, they're backwards. And, just a small note to her. And she was like, hey, let's do a personal call. Let's get them on the group meet. They're very willing. And I think a lot of us moms were like, I think we wanted to feel like we could do it, but, and it was easy for us to say, oh, these teachers are just sending us work. But the more that you talk to them, the teachers want to help. They want to do what they're used to doing. So I think just better communication, because I didn't have that with the teacher in school. I just expected that she was teaching. He would come home and I would reinforce the work at home. But now I have a better understanding of exactly what level he's at with reading and writing and math. And my communication with her has helped me adjust what to expect from him. So that, that has really helped. And one thing I will mention that I would have changed, I know Deloar had asked me about something I would have prepared for, the screen time. Wow. I have a son who's very athletic, so he never sat with an iPad. If he sat, he was bored. So I never anticipated that now I'd have a child that is addicted to screen time. But that's the only interaction he was having with his friends. So I think I would have implemented a little bit more rules, a little more schedule on that, time frames, that sort of thing. And I would have even talked to my parents, the other parents of the kids that he's playing with, who are actually, kind of friends of mine, mom friends. And I would have said, hey, we all need to be together. 8 o'clock is the limit, because, now we have kids that are throwing temper tantrums, but you feel bad. This is the only time they're talking to somebody their age all day. So, that's one thing I would have tried to better prepare for.
Excellent. So we are at the end of the show. Thank you so much, dear guest, Dr. Jennifer and Kristen. Thank you so much for attending in our show.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Dear viewers, so we are almost at the end of the show. And if you have any more questions about this topic today, you can put the comment below and we try to answer that. And we're going to try to come every Friday in this live show with a different kind of topics. And if you have any other topics in your head that we can discuss in the next few weeks, please put the topic in the comment, and we'll try to arrange that. We're going to have more practice in the community and try to get more involved with the community and try to give people different kind of output from that COVID, when our main target is to get some positive impact, so we can use that positive vibes to the community, and we like to be positive, right? And thank you so much for watching, and you have a great day. Thank you.